Thank you all for coming tonight. This is our first event back from the annual C-Lab conference, so it's great to see such a nice turnout. It's actually amazing to see so many new faces. So, how many people is tonight your first event?
Woo!
Pretty good turnout. Well, thank you for joining us. In case you were wondering, the restaurant is closed tonight, so if your reservation, sorry, but this is Cannabis Lab. The lab stands for Law, Accounting, and Business. We're a Cannabis Industry Association down here located in South Florida, but we have members all over the country. You can find our content on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, so definitely check us out. We have some leadership walking around, so definitely get to know everybody. Tonight's panel is an absolutely incredible one. I know I say that about a lot of them, but we work very hard to put these together. It is moderated by our very own Amanda Barton. She is the OG president, and she got a real job, and we don't have the time anymore. But luckily, because she moved on to bigger and better things, you guys get to listen to me outside of just the podcast now. I know you missed my voice. So, but Amanda is anchoring this, and then we also have, and hopefully this will work out well. Russ went to a concert tonight. Apparently, we have to let people do their own thing. But we have Christopher Laporte and Maha, and this is going to be on consumption lounges. And there's more detail than that, but that's as much as I know. It's very simple. These two are my go-tos. Whenever I have any questions around consumption lounges, I'm bugging them with text messages and emails. So I'm very excited to share their knowledge with you all. We have another gentleman who should be joining us. I know his schedule has been super tight. So if he joins, Jay Handal is one of the owners of the Woods Consumption Lounge with Woody Harrelson. So hopefully he'll be able to join us. I know he's got a lot going on with the All-Star game. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Amanda, and she will take you through the rest of your journey tonight.
Great. Thank you, everybody. It's so good to see you. Thanks so much for coming out. I love to see so many new faces tonight. I do have one request, Todd. If Jay does show up, I cannot see the screen. So if you could just like wave at me if he does show so I don't ignore him. I really appreciate that. As Todd mentioned, my name is Amanda Barton. I am a partner with Mr. Cannabis Law. Mr. Cannabis Law is a boutique law firm that offers business services for entrepreneurs and business people in the cannabis and psychedelic space. It was founded in 2019 when there really was a lack of sophisticated business counsel for cannabis companies. And, you know, there's been so many big mergers and acquisitions that there was really a lack of sophisticated business counsel that could assist with these large scale business transactions. So our founder, Dustin Robinson, started the firm on that premise, and we've been just growing ever since. So we just recently opened offices in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. So we have been actively helping our clients apply for licenses in those states. We are gearing up to help clients apply in New York. So if you have any interest, please feel free to connect with me after the panel. But I am so honored to be here tonight to talk about social consumption lounges. We really have two rock star panelists, and if Jay's able to join, he's a rock star as well. I'd love to give a little introduction of them both. The first is Maha Hawk. She is the Director of Retail Strategy at Green Thumb Industries. She's also the co-founder of Highspitality, which I love that name. Maha has dedicated her entire adult life and career to the legal cannabis industry. Starting in 2012, she first worked at medical dispensaries in Los Angeles, California. She worked as a cannabis delivery service, vertically integrated. She's done manufacturing, business consulting. She's done everything, all sorts of different things within the supply chain. Also, since 2020, she's worked in operations as a consultant for cannabis dispensaries, consumption lounges, and events through Highspitality. She's now the Director of Retail Strategy with Green Thumb Industries, but it's more than just experience. She's also extremely intelligent. She has an MS in pharmacological sciences, concentrating in medical cannabis sciences and therapeutics. So we are so honored to have her on the panel tonight. Hi, Maha. Would you give a brief introduction, or would you like to say anything to the group?
You gave a great introduction. Thank you, Amanda. That was awesome. Also want to point out Canna Club, Cannabis Student Organization. We're at 26 universities, and y'all are in Florida. We have one at University of Central Florida. So shout out to Canna Club, UCF.
Amazing. We also have Christopher Laporte, he's earned multiple business awards in Las Vegas, including 40 Under 40, Rising Stars of Business, Best Entrepreneur Role Model. He's been featured in Bloomberg Business Week and Entrepreneur Magazine for his impact in the nightlife industry. Since 2017, he has worked with Nevada lawmakers in development of cannabis social use regulations, and today offers a full suite of services for the cannabis hospitality industry through his company Reset. He's been so integral in helping develop the long-awaited regulations in Las Vegas. So we are so honored to have him here tonight, as he can shed some light on everything going on.
This way you don't restrain yourself for the people in the back.
Oh, wonderful. I have 2 mics now. Can everybody hear me better? Okay. Christopher, did you want to give a brief introduction and say hi to the group?
Hi, group. Let's get to work.
Awesome. We also, hopefully we'll have Jay who's able to join. If he is able to join, he is extremely knowledgeable. He is the founder and COO of Erba Markets. It's a cannabis retail company in California with multiple locations. Most recently, he has been collaborating with Woody Harrelson, Bill Mayer, and others to open The Woods, WeHo in West Hollywood, which is going to be an elevation of the retail cannabis experience. So if he's able to join, he is also a wealth of knowledge. Hi, Jay. Did you want to say anything to our group?
Hi, good afternoon. Yes, thank you for having me. Happy to be here. And let's rock and roll.
I like Jay's vibes.
Well, we'll just jump right into it. For any business to succeed, it's essential to understand the demographic, your target consumer. For each of you, who do you see as the social consumer attending cannabis consumption lounges? Maha, do you want to start it off?
Okay, let's do it. I was gonna volunteer Chris for this because we had a nice conversation about our the consumption lounge target audience, so, or the target consumer. So what I'm seeing, at least out here with the one consumption lounge that's open out here in West Hollywood, and with the one that was previously open, which was the OG Cannabis Cafe or the Lowell Cafe, they kept wanting to focus on younger consumers, the millennials and Gen Zs. However, that might not be the only consumer we should be looking at. And, Christopher and I, we spoke earlier and we were discussing about the professional, what you would call not the Z-millennials, but the X-zillennials. So like the professionals, the 35 and up, those should be the ones we should be focusing on, only because they might spend more than some of these millennials and Gen Zers at consumption lounges. We're clearly seeing that in the one that's open in West Hollywood. And, young people are just not big spenders right now. And it makes sense why they're not. So we need to target the professional consumer, the more older, well, not too old, but older than the millennial generation consumer would be the sweet spot for making ends meet and make margins meet when it comes to average transactions and the dollar amount of those transactions too.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that. Looking at this from the Las Vegas perspective, I think the term kind of curious has been thrown around for a while. And, in Vegas, tourism is king. If you go to Amsterdam, not to see the tulips, to play with the weed. And that's going to be Vegas very soon, too. And I like to always kind of point out, how many people go to a bar for a drink? If I was in that room right now, I'd point to everyone, like raise your hand if you go to a bar. And as most of you probably will be raising your hand, that will be the consumer eventually, but that's the target that we're looking at from a Vegas perspective. Anyone that wants to get social with their, social lubricants, as I like to call them, and that's going to be the consumer that we go after.
Jay, do you agree? Do you have anything else to add? Who do you see as your target market, either for Erba or the Woods?
So it's interesting. Erba Lompoc is more of a blue collar area of people who want to come and kick back, almost like being in a bar, and have events. We do things like karaoke and all that hokey stuff to bring people in, but it brings in all age groups. My demographic is really the sweet spot from 31 to 70. and 51 to 70 is really a bigger consumer in our cannabis shops in general. But I see in Lompoc, not so much the older, the younger people are coming because we do funky events for them. The Woods is different because the Woods has almost 4,000 square feet of outdoor jungle type atmosphere, with cabanas and koi ponds and things like that. We're attracting a whole different type of crowd to go into that store. Adding on to that, the fact that, in 45 days, we'll open up the liquor bar next door. That's going to give us a hugely big competitive advantage, because getting people who don't smoke, don't eat, and then tying in with the restaurant next door to us, being able to have food brought into the consumption lounge without actually having to operate a restaurant is going to give such a great mix of people. It's going to be the kind of curious. It's going to be, the 60s, 70s, old time Venice type hippies, looking for, lower THC, long-term smoking abilities and a place to go hang out and enjoy themselves. And I think having Woody and having Bill Mayer and, others involved, it's going to bring a celebrity crowd as well to that store. So I see I'm kind of looking at minestrone coming together. Lots of vegetables that are going to make a great soup.
I love it. I love it. I completely agree with all of you. I don't, I definitely think the target market and the people who are, a lot of people are going to be the business professionals on up. And it's interesting to see. I love to hear that you're doing karaoke. It's not all millennials who love karaoke or Gen Zs. We all love some karaoke. Moving on, what do you see as some of the benefits to social consumption lounges? There's, a lot of people that are against them, but what do you see as some of the benefits?
I'll start off real quick. It's just normalization. At the end of the day, we've been working on cannabis regs for 7+ years. And the fact that we still have to get over so many stigmas is just mind-boggling. And the opportunity to create a safe space for people to enjoy and to start to really, I like to call it, creating ambassadors and having people that's not just within our, endemic circle to start kind of preaching for, hey, this is what regular people do. And to start to build that, just, again, I really go back to the bar scene as being in the industry for so long. This is no different than that. We just need to have more people saying, what this can be and the opportunities that it offers versus the same talking heads in these panels all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. Anybody else? Did you want to jump in?
Well, Chris said it's normalization, and something at least in the West Hollywood and Los Angeles area, not a lot of landlords allow you to consume at their properties, and especially with how crazy rent is going everywhere, especially in SoCal, people aren't unable to leave and go to a better, or live in a better spot where they are able to smoke. So this is an avenue for them, an outlet for consumers to smoke without the fear of their landlord kicking them out. So that's a big aspect out here for sure.
Absolutely. And I also think that ties into the tourism industry, right? A lot of people travel and they're staying in hotels, and hotels don't have a place for you to go and consume. So you go to a recreational state where adult use is legalized, and you buy product and you have nowhere to consume it. So I do think that the social consumption lounges pose a solution to that, because a lot of people don't like to smell it on the Las Vegas Strip, or there's not a safe spot. So this is a safe place for people who are traveling to be able to go and consume. So I do think it helps with that.
And I'll just add to that. I'm sorry, Jay, just quickly, that really was the consumption lounge idea in Nevada, was a solution to a problem. We had this regulated from a recreational play. And we're like, all right, everyone have fun. And then the question was, well, where can I smoke? And the answer was always not here. And that wasn't a good enough answer to make. And so, again, when we start creating these opportunities, they come because they're needed. You know, it's no longer just that we're making some happy fun place. No, like these are necessary options for the industry as a whole to grow.
Yeah, and unfortunately, dealing with some of the cities, you know, what they do is they create a problem for the solution as opposed to a solution for the problem. You know, I owned restaurants for 27 years, restaurants and bars. This is no different than selling chicken parmesan.
Right.
I'm sorry. You know, we've gotten, the government has gotten us down to the point where we're scanning like CVS and, you know, taking money like a drugstore. So normalization, 100%. But what it does is you're right about the hotels and the tourism, but just for the local community. Most cities now, you can't smoke in your apartments. You can't smoke within 25 feet of the front of a commercial building. You know, if you're a smoker, I don't care what kind of product you're smoking, you know, it's basically like you're putting a label on your shirt and walking around being that person who smokes, as opposed to the guy who's dead drunk getting in his car, killing somebody, you know, because he shouldn't be behind a wheel. So this is a perfect opportunity now, not only to normalize what's been legalized, but to get rid of the stigma. And what I'm seeing in my years in this business is the stigma is slowly being eroded to the point where yesterday I had one of my medical doctors contact me about a retired policeman who's now ready to smoke because of his chronic pain. Okay, and he needs something and he doesn't know how to do it. So people are coming in now, people you would never expect to come in are coming in. And having a lounge gives them that safe place to come, gives them, what did we just go through in the last 2 years? I don't know about you guys, but I was in the hospital for 3 months with COVID, okay? And I can tell you that given the opportunity to socialize anywhere with anybody over anything is a great thing. So being able to go out and smoke with your friends and hang out, you know, is by far what we should be promoting right now.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you had a good recovery, and we're thankful to have you here today. But to touch on that, I think it's very true. It gives users, like beginners, an opportunity to learn from people who are more experienced, right? People that have never had experience with this, they go to, you know, a bud tender who might not be the most educated, that like tells them they wanted the highest THC product that maybe is not right for them, where a lounge would allow them to interact with somebody who's a little more experienced, or get some insight from more experienced users. So I love the ability to be able to educate and be around people who have more experience, because there's a lack of that here, I think, in our industry.
I like that you brought up education too, because, you know, the consumption lounge staff, they're, you know, going to essentially take the role of what you would see at a bartender, but also at the same time, like pharmacy technician, or even a pharmacist at times. Like, there's going to be a lot of balancing between service and care. So there's you know, there's a difference between customer service and patient care, but to package it all up, it's consumer service and care. So the education is definitely key. And, you know, that's one of, I know I'm just jumping in here, but on an operational level, so GTI does have one consumption lounge open in the suburbs of Chicago, north of Chicago, called Rise Mundelein. And we do see a lot of patients there too. And there is a fine line between serving a customer and serving a patient. But at the end of the day, we should educate both of them at the same level with utmost respect and as much information. And especially with the different products that are coming in, and consumption lounge friendly products as well, you know, making sure that it's all laid out for your consumer is very important. So yes, I love that you said education is very important, because it really is. You're a bartender and a pharmacist at the same time when you're on the floor.
Definitely. And I think that education goes hand in hand with you know, this destigmatization that Chris was talking about. So it's great to see as education continues to grow, the destigmatization really is we're trying to fight against it. So there is a lot of opposition for social consumption lounges, and some of the arguments that are raised is public health concerns, drug driving, and even, I don't necessarily know if this is valid, but increased crime rate. What are your thoughts on these concerns, and how do we combat those? So, so social consumption lounges aren't viewed as a nuisance to the communities in which they exist.
So during the promulgation of the regs, which took many years, one of the things that was the key, component of winning was listening. It's easy to say, get out of here. But the reality is we don't have a lot of data, and it's not worth fighting against them to say, we had a cardiologist in Nevada who was telling us how this stuff is basically going to give us all just, diabetes. But at the end of the day, we decided that the best route to take is just to mitigate these problems before they come. And so it goes to the early question, right? Education is going to be a very key thing. But what it comes down to is the execution of customer service is tantamount, paramount, use a big word there, because as we take people, and again, from a Las Vegas tourist perspective, every regulated, city, state is going to be very different. But from a Las Vegas perspective, we are looking at this like every day is going to be St. Patrick's Day. Okay, St. Patrick's Day as a Las Vegas bar owner is a nightmare because someone's going to just go over the top and do something kind of stupid and irrational. But because there's going to be such an unknown for so many of these cannabis kind of curious, consumers, we have to ensure that everything that we do is executed absolutely to the T. And I urge those who are interested in getting the space, don't think too big. You don't need a room that fits 400 people. Let's start small, and let's ensure that what we're doing is creating, again, I like to use the term safe space, and look into the things that with our regs where the movement of air quality it's rapid. When you go to a casino, you don't smell as much as the cigarette smoke because technology has changed so much. So by putting together plans for ride share, by basically putting a lot of extra information where some of us legacy guys may not think that cardiology problems for cannabis patients. No. So, it's really about listen to those who oppose this. It's a very divisive world we're in today. So just listen and show that, hey, look, we're going above and beyond to ensure a very safe environment and, again, mitigate the risk by executing properly.
And as it concerns about crime rate, if you have legal establishments, that will decrease the amount of illicit establishments and illicit dispensaries. There's a lot of trap shops out here in LA. And the reason being because we don't have enough dispensaries out here. So the same applies to consumption lounges. If you have this concept available, then people are going to go to the legal one, as opposed to doing their own underground, like truly the speakeasy type model. And there are a couple around LA and they're not really safe. So it's, if anything, legal establishments will decrease illicit activity.
Go ahead.
So speaking as a current judge for the LA Police Commission, I can tell you that crime is reduced around all legal shops that are busy. And I quantify that by saying that are busy. We believe that, good, positive pedestrian movement is what thwarts the bad guys, because they don't want to be seen. They don't want to be in the middle of a crowd when they're trying to do some knucklehead crime. West Hollywood is an interesting city because our security team is not allowed to be armed in West Hollywood, which I think is, pretty interesting considering the industry we're in and the amount of crime that happens in trap shops. But the problem is it bleeds and people go, oh, pot shops are terrible because they're always having holdups and shootings. Well, show me one with a license that's having those issues. The good operators are not having those issues. So, and I always point out in my meetings, again, I do a lot of city meetings in West LA area around my Pico shop. And, when I have these stakeholders talking about pot shops, I tell them, check the crime stats. All you have to do is ask your local police officer, your senior lead officer, or in West Hollywood, the sheriffs, give me a CAD map of crime. And you'll see where the shops are is where the crime isn't. You know, you want to see the 79 calls for service in 3 months at Starbucks on Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood? 79 calls for service in 3 months. Okay, I know my shop, The Woods, has had 0 calls for service in 3 months. So you tell me.
100% agree with you there. Very, very astute observation. And I appreciate you sharing that data with us. I 100% agree. I don't necessarily think there is a correlation to consumption lounges and increased crime rates. In fact, like you pointed out, I think it's the exact opposite, to be completely honest. I don't want to spend too much time on this because we have so many interesting topics to talk about tonight. But I do want to touch on it briefly. Historically in California and more recently in New York, we've seen a lot of kind of consumption lounges operating in the gray area. Specifically, we've seen like this private club model kind of erupt where you can become a private member and then consume at these lounges and either bring your own marijuana or purchase it on site. What are your feelings on these private club models operating in the gray area?
This is a great segue from what we were previously talking about. In the city of LA, there's no ordinance for cannabis consumption lounges. However, there's a lot of, like you said, those membership club models that are popping up at these venues that are that have the front of being like a shared workspace or a venue space. And while some of them do collaborate with legal and licensed brands, it's not always the case. There are some, illicit products going through those places, but some of them are trying to find a workaround. The ones who are trying to retain some sort of legitimacy, they're partnering up with a delivery service who will deliver directly to that venue. It's a workaround, just because there's a lack of process and, policy for that in the city of LA. So these venues get with the delivery, have some sort of rev share agreement, and that's how product is either purchased or bought for the event or the party that's happening at these membership only venues. But it's interesting to see it because now everyone wants to do it. But is this sustainable? That's not the case. It's not going to be sustainable, especially when there is a legitimized process in place. So will these membership only clubs, thrive and survive afterwards? No, it'll be completely obsolete, but that's the workaround that's happening right now. Like right after this, I'm actually going to be going to Green Street in downtown LA, which is a weed work type of venue. Although it's in the middle of downtown, there's no license process for consumption lounges. It's going to be a consumption event, and that's because it's a privately owned venue. They have they either have a delivery service that they're partnered with, or they have the brands bringing in samples or gifting products to the people visiting that event or venue. So that's the workaround: samples, gifting, delivery partners at privately owned venues. Not sustainable, not a foreseeable future for it, but it is a Band-Aid for right now.
And I'll follow up to that. At the end of the day, I have nothing but respect for these legacy operators. I do really fanboy a lot when I see these creative ways to kind of challenge the industrial strength of the MSOs, because it also gives us opportunity to say, hey, who are some really good people we can work with one day? But at the end of the day, because of the way we were able to put these regulations in Nevada together, it allowed for so much flexibility that at the end of the day, you're not going to want to go to these spaces, because would you go to a restaurant if the health department didn't do spot checks? Probably not. And the way we're working so closely with our government regulators will really show that we're creating a better product than this gray area market. Then I could see it's just kind of dissipating over time.
So I have a little different perspective.
Let's go, Jay.
Interesting you mentioned, would you go to a restaurant that's not inspected? Los Angeles is a rogue city. You've got people out cooking on the streets every night. No health department, no permits, no taxes, no enforcement. Unless and until the city, and I'm talking LA in particular, writes into the code the ability to have consumption lounges, they're going to proliferate. These, I'll call them trap lounges. They're gonna proliferate throughout the city, to the point that when they finally decide to regulate and give licenses, who's going to want a license in a city where they don't enforce today the 500 trap shops versus the 280 or 285 legal shops? I mean, I had a trap shop across the street from me on Pico for 2.5 years, and I'm a police commission judge, and I couldn't get them shut down. So no one's got a shot. So my point is, we need to do different things with these lounges. And I think the first thing, as opposed to hoping that, you know, someday we're going to have regulations allowing consumption everywhere, the first thing is the regs need to be changed. DCC and DCR and whoever it is in Vegas and everywhere else, we need to have regulations that say you can't deliver, you know, X amount to a single location. You know, you can't buy, you know, more than a certain amount, whether you're medical or recreational. You know, the POS system shuts you down. Well, there's got to be some regulation to stop these shops from having illegal consumption on premises, because it's going to be a long time before most cities catch up with consumption. And when they do, it's going to be so far behind the curve, it's not going to matter. It's going to be just like we have in LA now, with double the amount of trap shops than legal shops. And the trap shops are winning, you know.
So it's fascinating, and I really would like to have this conversation more in a, you know, over a joint with you, sir, because, you know, when we first got the city of Las Vegas to listen to the opportunity for social use lounges, which we call consumption lounges, back in 2017, we got shut down by the governor because they're like, there's not enough regulators for this. We had to create something. Nevada knows how to mitigate vice because we embrace it, right? So we created the Cannabis Compliance Board and created this, you know, another, unfortunately, government body. I know how much that makes people like, but it was that additional, you know, security blanket to allow for, you know, focus on shutting these things down. They're, you know, maybe not to the extent that Los Angeles is, clearly, but in Nevada, you know, these parties that were happening were getting shut down by the cops. And they were getting shut down by way of the way, you know, we just operated the Cannabis Compliance Board. And so, you know, I see the challenges in LA. I was recently in West Hollywood 2 weekends ago. I actually did stop by your spot, also went to the artistry, and I hear the pain that's there, which is why we in Nevada are so excited to, you know, kind of showcase, hey, look, here's what we're doing. Please copy this, because at the end of the day, we're going to need, you know, some more even Stevens playing fields in each state so that the industry as a whole can grow. I mean, we're still trying to figure out how do we discuss cannabis to regular people, the, you know, the non-endemics, and from a terpene profile perspective versus just indica, right? Or, you know, sativa. So there's still so much to do. And I tell this all the time to my regulator friends is, you know, you want to put your foot in the door and just get the door slightly open, right? There's an Indian proverb, blessed is he, the plants, the trees that never gets to see the shade. This is going to be a long process. Change does not happen overnight. But if we start kind of working together from different regulatory, you know, industries or states for that matter, and show like, hey, look, this is working, which is why execution is so key. And for those people in the audience who want to get into the Las Vegas market, there's only going to be 20 licenses, right? So its competition is going to be crazy to get those. But it's, again, to see how well can these work. Can we do these right and execute properly? And, you know, a lot of this stuff seems common sense, no question. Like, just operate a goddamn restaurant, dude, let's go. But unfortunately, we have too many people watching to make sure we don't fuck it up. I like you, Jake. That was good, though.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate your insight there. I think there was a lot of good recommendations. I to a certain extent, I definitely agree. I'd love to see regulation trying to shut these illicit operations down, but at the same time, having it written in a statute doesn't help if there's not enforcement.
Right.
We really got to have the enforcement. And to me, it's crazy what's going on in New York, you know, not even just with the social consumption lounges, but even just the dispensing that's going on. Because, you know, at the end of the day, it's not good for our industry. We want to see safe products making it to market. You know, safety is a big concern. And with all the illicit operations going on, I just don't think good for our industry as a whole.
There's nothing good about a weed ice cream truck driving down the Bronx. There's nothing good about it. But how fast people saw that thing was happening was wild.
It's crazy.
It's a real good humor truck.
You know, as more states come online and begin adopting regulations, I agree. I mean, hopefully we'll squeeze some of these illicit operations out. But we're seeing states take very, very different approaches. You know, as with all things cannabis, you know, each state can do what they want, seeing as it's federally illegal. So different states are adopting different models. New Jersey and states similar to that, in certain places in California, they've adopted basically on-site consumption for retail locations. So dispensaries can have a lounge, like you were mentioning, Jay, where others, such as Las Vegas and Nevada, have adopted, you know, an ability just to be a standalone on-site consumption lounge where you can get a small amount of marijuana on site and it's not a full dispensary. What are your thoughts? What is the best model going forward? What do you think is the model for success?
So I know in Nevada, there was talks about single serve products. And, you know, it's really hard to measure single servings, especially when it comes to flower and concentrates. There are companies who have, you know, have gone down this innovative pathway of creating single serve dab type products. I know there's Wax Snacks where they have tiny little vessels of 0.1 or even less grams of cannabis concentrate. But for someone else, that might not be enough as a single serving. And likewise with flower, someone might be able to smoke an eighth in one sitting, and someone else might be only able to smoke half a gram in one sitting. So I see a benefit with giving retailers the opportunity and ability to have consumption lounges as opposed to standalone first, because you already have the products coming in, the product procurement process is already set in place, and you are also dealing directly with the vendors. So you can make certain requests and ask for maybe a different type of packaging in terms of like a single serve version of what you are already getting from them, or if they can have the ability to repackage something that they already have on their on that shop's shelves. So I see a benefit with having retail being the pilot for the consumption lounge model. And then I think standalone can follow thereafter. But it's really going to be a tricky process to assess what single serve means. And I'm not sure, I like at this point, I'm not sure if that's the right approach to start manufacturing and, you know, packaging single serve products. However, there should be some sort of format where there is an entire product and the retailer and or consumption lounge is able to increment that full product for their consumption lounge patrons. So there's going to be a lengthy process on that, but I know Nevada was very keen on the single serve products for lounges.
Yeah, and for clarification, the single serve, you know, we were very creative with our regulations to ensure that we can learn from them and make changes as necessary. But at the end of the day, you know, a glass of wine, a bottle of beer, or a shot of whiskey, that is single serve. We're not necessarily saying that after you finish your single serve, you can't have another single serve. So, you know, there are going to be ways that as long as you're operating properly and we're making sure people aren't passing out in the corner, that you're just simply ensuring the consumer safety. Single serve is something that became very controversial because everyone wants to know the granularity of what that means. But I don't think anyone really has an answer, because I still think everyone on this panel, myself included, doesn't know everything about what's really going to happen in the next 5 years. So it's going to be a learning process.
Jay, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll take a double.
This is my guy.
Love that.
So something I'm really excited to talk about. At the end of June, Nevada issued the final approval on the regulations as to the consumption lounges. And we're so lucky to have Chris here tonight, because he was really intimately involved in helping collaborate on those regulations. And they're very, you know, they've been highly anticipated. So, and I think they'll set, you know, a precipice for the rest of the United States, hopefully to follow. So Chris, could you kind of give us just, I mean, I know we could probably talk about this for 5 hours, but can you kind of give us like a high level view of the regulations that Nevada have passed and some of like the key, you know, aspects to those regulations?
Yeah, I mean, we touched on it already with the single use. You know, again, we are not going to expect to know what every consumer wants, and we hope to have everything on hand to provide that service to everyone. But what was really great about the way we put the regs together was allowing the business owners to just get creative and figure things out as to what is going to attract the cannabis consumer and the non-endemics. And, you know, the biggest thing that we fought tooth and nail for was infused foods. You know, people are always talking about, we need alcohol in these places to make money. I challenge that notion because, you know, while there may be a need for alcohol for the non, you know, cannabis consumer, great, sure, we'll get to you soon. But to really develop this market and this community properly, I do think that by offering not, you know, an infused food menu that is truly an experience that you can't have anywhere else, great, I just created something for you to try something completely new. It's not the stigma of smoking a joint or anything to that matter. And it's just something that now introduces you to the world of cannabis as a whole. So, you know, on top of the, you know, the service of the product itself, it was also just the opportunity to, number one, learn your consumer and your customer and be sure to understand who the person is walking through the door and asking the right questions to said person so that you know how to properly service that, you know, individual. Pause. On top of that, it was air quality control. You know, I mentioned earlier the smoking, you know, there was for probably a full year the thought that these places are going to look like opium dens with just clouds of smoke billowing out of windows. You know, of course, that's not the case with the technology of filtration systems and air movement. So HVAC systems are going to be very, very expensive, unfortunately, but it comes at a benefit of you're coming into a venue that you're not going to walk out smelling like a cloud. And, you know, again, at the end of the day, if you can create some live entertainment and do the things that make things interesting, you're making a venue that people want to go to. You don't, if you want to create a dive bar environment where you just have really crappy beer, all right, there's a market for that. But do you want to do that for the cannabis space right now when it's just coming out of the closet per se? No, you want to come out fabulous. So, you know, the regs that we put together gave a lot of flexibility to the business owners. And the reality is with only 20 independent licenses available, it's going to be competitive as all get out. And what that will mean is the ones that come out better do a great job, because once that's gone, someone's sweeping in to try it. And, you know, again, it's not going to be quite as limited as so many other markets that we see.
Amazing. Yeah. And I love the idea of the infused foods as well, because like you said, especially with COVID, it's made people a lot more cognizant of smoking and whatnot. So allowing the infused foods, I think is exciting and gives another option to consumption. So love that's built in as well. Thank you for sharing that insight. We are quickly running out of time. So I do want to touch on just a couple of locations that are actually operating or about to operate. Jay, could you give us a little insight into the Woods? I know it just opened recently in May, and I hear that you guys are hoping to have a lounge aspect to it. Could you give us a little insight what you hope to do with the Woods?
Sure. So the lounge that we're building in the back is kind of unique just because of what it looks like. You know, when you've got, you know, a few thousand square feet of what I will call an Indonesian jungle, you know, with a koi pond with 20-year-old koi that you could ride like a dolphin, you know, we have 4 two-story bungalows that people can rent. Our workaround on the issue of closing the dispensary at 10, but keeping consumption open till 2 is to have like Japanese whiskey lockers where people can rent lockers and they can buy their product and have it stored with their name on the locker, and they can come in at midnight and they can open up the locker and take product out and, you know, smoke and do, you know, if they have an additive, we have a tonic bar, elixir bar, we call it an additive bar, where you'll be able to take product and add it in and, you know, to a regular drink that you'll get there and drink it on premises. Again, having Nora's next door, we've contracted with them to do all the food, so they'll have a vegan menu that is on a tablet and people can just hit the menu and have the food delivered into them. We'll have rentals on the 2-story bungalows, and we'll have enough seating, you know, for parties that want to come in or have takeover parties, private parties. we have brands that are asking us, and, a lot of celebrities want to hold parties, and event planners are coming. So, it's trying to find a workaround around the 10 o'clock close. I think we found that, having the liquor bar next door that's open till 2 a.m. And with the new regulations WeHo just passed and the state's passing, at some point, alcohol will be illegal until 4 a.m. So, and maybe, cannabis will grow up faster than alcohol did, and it'll catch up to.
Amazing. I've been checking out your location online, and I'm very excited to get to West Hollywood and check it out. It looks absolutely amazing. So
it's stunning, and I'm pretty sure the designer is Thomas Shu, who designed Tao in Los Angeles. So very, very beautiful spot. It's like Bali vibes.
No, and that's key for these things to win, that experiential opportunity. If you don't have something that makes someone go wow as you walk in, close your doors now.
Yeah, and that's kind of what the issue with artistry is. It's great, but not a lot of people know it exists or is open, or rather the consumption lounge aspect is open yet. But that's it has a good vibe, but at the same time, like, there's going to be other lounges like the Woods that will be offering a completely different type of vibe. So I am excited to see some clustering between the lounges in West Hollywood. It's going to encourage a lot more consumers and foot traffic in general, and general awareness about consumption lounges in the area. Because right now, with just the one in WeHo, no one knows about it. Even if you put marketing, you put efforts into, brand awareness, it's, there's no other example of it. So people are not going to approach it as easily. So I am very excited about the Woods opening. There's a couple others that will be opening as well. And we'll be partnering up with traditional restaurants. One thing about artistry that I noticed as a consumer, as a customer there, is they are partnered with a restaurant that is a little bit away, like a couple 100 feet away, and they have to go upstairs, and it's just a whole process. Yeah. And I think it's a great approach, having the restaurant right next to your consumption lounge. So Jay doing the Woods with Nora is such a strategic move, and I think that's what's going to be the future of some of these consumption lounges, is being strategically located right next to that awesome restaurant partner or bar partner, whatever it may be. Just being right next to them is what's going to encourage just general awareness of the lounge and seamless operations.
Wonderful. I wish we had all night to talk about all the different lounges out there. I could go on for hours with you guys, but unfortunately our time's kind of coming to an end. So I'd love to just, in the last few minutes, see if we have any audience questions, whether it's online or here in person.
Oh, Jay's back. Quick, start talking.
Okay, I can.
So you talked about a lot of different states, but I've really not heard anything about Florida. So what is the state of Florida take on consumption lounges or cannabis in general?
So the question was, we've heard about other states, but in Florida specifically, what's the opportunity here in the state of Florida? I can speak to that as a Florida attorney. Unfortunately, the state of Florida is still medical. So we have vertical integration. So you have to do everything from site to sale, or from seed to sale. And the statutes just at this time don't contemplate on-site consumption at all. So we are seeing, like in Miami, there are a few places that have adopted the private member model that we've seen, but no one's doing it legally.
And just to add on to that, so through Highspitality, we were actually reached out to by a Miami company or a Miami CBD store that wanted to have a Delta 8 focused lounge. So that's also another thing. Some of these other markets that don't have consumption lounges or are just medical are trying to approach the lounge model is through their CBD retailer or their hemp retailer, honing into the Delta 8 products and making a cannabis lounge through those means. Is that literally a cannabis consumption lounge? No, but it is a work around it. And we've had a couple clients at Highspitality who wanted to make a workaround through hemp products.
Amanda, I think let's
I'll talk to you after.
Amanda, let's go to the screen.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions from online users. Let's see.
This one from
I don't know
Oleg
if you
is
guys
really
can hear
cool.
me, but what
Absolutely, go for it.
the ways you will attract and retain customers? Very important is repetitive
What are the
customers.
ways you will attract and
Have
retain
expensive
customers?
experience
Very
with
important
smoking
is
lounge, blah, blah,
repetitive
blah. So yeah,
customers.
how are you guys going to
Um,
retain
What
customers
are
and
your
get them
thoughts on
coming
that?
back?
How do you retain customers?
You have to build community. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a young market. I use the end of the day way too much. But this is a young market. So what you have to do again is create something that's worth coming back to. Why is someone going to come back? Because they had exceptional service. I go on this whole Vegas rant because if you go to Paris, they're very proud of their service industry. Well, in Vegas, we're very proud of ours. If you make someone really enjoy themselves and you ensure that you have some way of following up from a technology aspect as well, where now I know what you like and I know what you want to do next time you're here, and I invite you back because I have all the things that are exactly to your tune, you've built yourself a community.
Loyalty, rewards, keep them coming. Send them SMS, have those text messages, keep telling them, incentivizing. For the Rise Lounge in the Chicago suburbs, we always send event invites via text. We always, put those quirky details like, oh, we have Mario Kart video game session, we have karaoke, we have comedy night. So just being engaged with your consumer base. And of course, just like Chris said, just keep building that community. But there's so many tools, loyalty and reward program tools that I encourage using and that I use myself for the one lounge that we've got.
And if you're coming at philanthropy from a legitimate source and you're not full of shit, you're just doing it for the attention, do it for the right reasons. That's also going to help build your markets.
The last question go ahead.
Hey, everyone. I have a question. I have never been to a consumption lounge myself. Is everyone hearing me?
Can you guys hear her?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, guys, it's Aisha. So my question is, I've never been to a consumption lounge myself. What is the restriction in terms of a consumption lounge also being licensed to serve alcohol and or food? Because I feel like from a social standpoint, those things all go hand in hand and would be a huge opportunity from a marketing and just, reach standpoint.
So I know Chris and I talked about this earlier. I'll hand it over to you real quick, but the Lowell Cafe, now then called OG Cannabis Cafe, now High Times just bought it. They have parceled out their property in a way where they have a liquor license. Actually, it's beer and wine only, but it's a license for beer and wine only in one part of that venue, and then the adjacent part is the smoking area. But it's quite literally the same building. It's just parceled out in a way where you can allow for both. And Chris and I also talked that it's going to be inevitable, those two substances being under the same roof. It's the inevitable future of social consumption in general, where liquor and cannabis are going to coexist together.
And I'll just add that for Nevada, the reason why we didn't put it together was because we were working with our law enforcement and they were concerned that if we put the two together, crossfading would be a very serious combination that would happen entirely too much with our tourist audience. And I'll also say, look, while I'd love to see them together, if you're operating that venue, do you really want to have to do the cleanup after those messes? Do you really want to deal with the people who pass out? You know what no one in this room is thinking about right now? How much are people coughing in a consumption lounge after COVID-19? Oh, that's going to be a very unattractive experience for our consumers. So there's all these things that we're really thinking through about before we jump all the way in the water. Just dip your toe in there. And, for those who want to drink before they come in, well, I'm sorry to say, just do it somewhere else until we get everything operating, pristinely.
Lowell Cafe saw 8 to 10 pass outs a week with just cannabis alone. And then when alcohol came in, there were ambulance called at least every 2 weeks.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I'd love to continue the discussion, but we appreciate your time. You guys are definitely the experts in the industry. So thank you so much for being here tonight.
Jay, Maha, Chris, thank you so much. You guys have been great partners in business. Thank you for joining us. Thank you tonight.
Thank you,
for
guys.
everybody. Give our panelists one more hand before we go.
Thanks, everyone. Consumption
you,
lounges
guys.
are the future.